When Chinese elders perform small daily movements, the scientific value lies not in how hard the muscles work, but in how often they are reminded to work at all. Muscle tissue is deeply responsive to regular signaling from the nervous system, and when those signals arrive daily, even at low intensity, the body interprets them as a reason to preserve strength. Research in physiology shows that muscle atrophy is driven less by age itself and more by prolonged silence between neural commands. When movement disappears from daily life, motor neurons fire less frequently, protein synthesis slows, and muscle fibers gradually lose their functional identity. Gentle movements repeated every day interrupt this decline by keeping communication lines open between the brain and the muscles. Each repetition sends electrical signals that maintain neuromuscular junctions, the microscopic bridges where nerves meet muscle fibers, and these junctions are essential for preserving coordination and strength over time. At the same time, joints benefit from this regular activity in a way intense exercise cannot always guarantee. Cartilage has no direct blood supply, so it relies on movement to absorb nutrients from surrounding fluid. Small, rhythmic motions compress and release the joint's surfaces, acting like a pump that nourishes cartilage cells and removes metabolic waste. Without this daily nourishment, joints stiffen, range of motion shrinks, and pain becomes more likely, which then discourages movement further. Chinese elders unconsciously break this cycle by choosing movements that feel sustainable rather than demanding, ensuring they never stop moving altogether. On a cellular level, these daily movements also support mitochondrial health. Mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside muscle cells, respond favorably to frequent low-level activity. They multiply and function efficiently when they're used regularly, even gently, which helps maintain endurance and metabolic health deep into old age. Intense workouts performed occasionally can create sharp spikes in demand, but they may also increase inflammation and recovery time, especially in aging bodies. Daily gentle movement avoids this stress response pattern and instead creates a steady environment where repair can keep pace with wear. There is also a psychological dimension that biology cannot ignore. Movements that feel achievable encourage consistency, and consistency is the real stimulus the body understands. When the brain associates movement with ease rather than strain, it reinforces the habit rather than resisting it. Over decades, this leads to a body that has never fully forgotten how to move. Strength, in this context, is not explosive power, but functional resilience, the ability to rise, walk, turn, and balance without fear. Science increasingly recognizes that longevity depends on maintaining these everyday capabilities, and small daily movements quietly protect them by honoring the body's need for repetition, circulation, and continuity, allowing strength to persist not as a peak, but as a constant presence woven into daily life's flow. Controlled movement has a profound influence on balance because balance itself is not a single physical skill, but a conversation between the brain, the inner ear, the eyes, and the sensory receptors embedded throughout muscles and joints. Chinese elders who move deliberately each day are constantly rehearsing this conversation, even when the movements appear simple. From a scientific perspective, balance depends heavily on proprioception, the body's ability to sense its position in space. Proprioceptive receptors respond best to precise, mindful motion rather than speed or force. When movement is slow, the brain has time to process feedback from these receptors, refine motor commands, and strengthen neural pathways that stabilize posture. This is especially important with aging, because the nervous system naturally becomes less efficient at processing sensory information. Without regular stimulation, reaction times lengthen and coordination fades, increasing the risk of falls. Daily slow movements counteract this by repeatedly challenging the body to adjust to subtle shifts in weight and alignment. Each controlled transfer of body weight trains the cerebellum, the part of the brain responsible for coordination and fine motor control, to remain adaptable rather than rigid. Scientific studies on neuroplasticity show that the brain retains its ability to reorganize and strengthen connections when it is given consistent, meaningful input, and balance-focused movement provides exactly that. Unlike fast or explosive exercise, which often relies on momentum, slow movement demands active stabilization. Muscles must engage continuously to prevent collapse, especially the small stabilizing muscles around the ankles, hips, and spine that are essential for upright posture. These muscles tend to weaken first with age because they are rarely trained intentionally. When elders move slowly, they awaken these forgotten muscles and restore their role as quiet guardians of stability. The vestibular system in the inner ear also benefits from this practice. Gentle changes in head position during slow movement help maintain the sensitivity of balance organs that detect motion and orientation. This keeps dizziness and disorientation at bay, conditions that often lead older adults to limit movement out of fear. Fear itself becomes a biological factor, altering movement patterns and increasing stiffness, which paradoxically raises fall risk. By practicing slow movement daily, elders build confidence as well as control, teaching the nervous system that balance is manageable rather than threatening. There's also an energetic efficiency to this approach. Instead of exhausting the system, slow movement conserves energy while still delivering meaningful stimulation. This allows the practice to continue even on days when strength feels reduced, preserving continuity. Over time, the body learns to self-correct more quickly, catching small imbalances before they become dangerous. Balance, then, is no longer a fragile skill that disappears with age, but a living function that is constantly renewed through attention and repetition. In this way, slow daily movement becomes both a neurological exercise and a form of quiet self-trust, reinforcing the body's innate capacity to remain upright, responsive, and secure in its relationship with gravity. Gentle loading of the body is one of the most underestimated biological signals for long-term strength, especially in aging bones and tendons. Chinese elders do not avoid stress on the body, but they apply it carefully, allowing tissues to adapt rather than break down. From a scientific standpoint, bones are living structures that constantly remodel themselves in response to force. When a bone experiences gentle, repeated loading, specialized cells called osteoblasts are activated to maintain density and structural integrity. Without this signal, bones begin to lose minerals, becoming fragile and porous over time. What is striking is that bones respond best not to extreme force, but to consistent, moderate pressure applied regularly. Small daily movements provide just enough stimulus to remind the skeletal system that strength is still required. Tendons and ligaments respond in a similar way. These connective tissues rely on mechanical tension to maintain their elasticity and resilience. When gently stretched and loaded, tendon cells increase collagen alignment, improving their ability to transmit force efficiently between muscle and bone. This process supports joint stability and reduces the likelihood of injury. In contrast, excessive or irregular loading can overwhelm these tissues, triggering microdamage that outpaces the body's ability to repair itself. Aging bodies are particularly sensitive to this imbalance, which is why intense exercise often leads to prolonged soreness, inflammation, or injury in older adults. Gentle loading avoids this problem by staying within the body's repair capacity. On a cellular level, controlled stress activates repair pathways without provoking chronic inflammation. Inflammation is not inherently harmful. It is a necessary part of healing. However, when inflammation becomes persistent, it interferes with tissue regeneration and accelerates degeneration. Slow, deliberate movement creates brief, localized stress that resolves quickly, allowing anti-inflammatory processes to dominate. This balance is critical for longevity. Studies in mechanobiology show that cells exposed to moderate mechanical strain improve their metabolic efficiency and structural organization. Tendon cells become more resilient, and bone cells maintain healthier turnover rates. Chinese elders intuitively follow this principle by choosing movements that feel smooth and sustainable rather than forceful. There is also a neurological benefit to gentle loading. When movements are controlled, the brain accurately predicts and manages the forces acting on the body. This improves motor control and reduces compensatory tension, which often contributes to joint wear. The result is a system that distributes load evenly rather than concentrating stress in vulnerable areas. Over decades, this even distribution protects joints, preserves posture, and maintains mobility. Gentle loading also supports blood flow through connective tissues, which are otherwise poorly supplied with circulation. Movement acts as a pump, delivering oxygen and nutrients while removing waste products. This nourishment supports ongoing repair and keeps tissues responsive rather than brittle. What emerges from this daily practice is not stiffness or fragility, but a quiet durability. Strength is maintained not through domination of the body, but through cooperation with its biological rhythms, allowing bones and tendons to renew themselves continuously while avoiding the inflammatory traps that so often accompany aggressive exercise routines. When movement is synchronized with breath, it becomes more than a physical act and turns into a regulator of the body's internal chemistry. Chinese elders intuitively align slow motion with steady breathing. And from a scientific perspective, this pairing has a powerful effect on stress hormones that quietly shape long-term health. The human stress response is governed largely by the autonomic nervous system, which balances between activation and recovery. Fast, strained breathing signals urgency to the brain, increasing cortisol and adrenaline levels that prepare the body for short-term survival. While useful in emergencies, these hormones become damaging when elevated chronically, accelerating aging processes in the heart, brain, and immune system. Breath-guided movement shifts the nervous system in the opposite direction. Slow inhalations and extended exhalations stimulate the vagus nerve, a key pathway that promotes parasympathetic activity, often described as the rest and repair state. When elders move gently while breathing deeply, they repeatedly send signals that the environment is safe, allowing cortisol levels to settle. This hormonal calm has measurable biological consequences. Lower cortisol reduces muscle breakdown, supports bone preservation, and protects memory-related regions of the brain, such as the hippocampus. The heart also responds favorably, as calm breathing patterns improve heart rate variability, a marker strongly associated with longevity and resilience to disease. From a circulatory standpoint, breath-synchronized movement enhances oxygen delivery. Deep, rhythmic breathing improves lung ventilation and increases the efficiency of gas exchange, ensuring that working muscles and vital organs receive a steady supply of oxygen without strain. This efficiency matters more with age, when respiratory muscles weaken and oxygen uptake naturally declines. Gentle movement coordinated with breath allows elders to maintain cardiovascular function without overwhelming the system. There is also an immune dimension to this practice. Chronic stress suppresses immune responses, making the body more vulnerable to infection and slower to heal. By calming stress pathways, breath-centered movement helps preserve immune balance, allowing inflammatory responses to activate only when truly needed. Psychologically, this combination fosters a sense of internal coherence. When breath and movement align, attention naturally settles into the present moment. This mindful state reduces rumination and anxiety, which themselves drive stress hormone release. Over time, the brain learns to associate movement with calm rather than effort, reinforcing a positive feedback loop where physical activity becomes emotionally soothing instead of taxing. Chinese elders benefit from this loop by remaining active without resistance or fear. There is also evidence that breath-regulated movement improves sleep quality by stabilizing circadian rhythms and reducing nighttime cortisol spikes. Better sleep further enhances hormonal balance, tissue repair, and cognitive clarity. What appears externally as a simple daily ritual is, internally, a sophisticated biological intervention. breath acts as a bridge between conscious intention and automatic physiological processes, giving individuals a degree of influence over systems that often feel uncontrollable. Through daily practice, elders gently tuned their nervous systems, protecting organs from the wear of chronic stress while nurturing a calm vitality that supports both physical strength and mental clarity well into advanced age, allowing well-being to emerge not from force, but from harmony between breath, movement, and the quiet intelligence of the body. Longevity in the lives of Chinese elders reveals a pattern that modern science is only beginning to fully appreciate. The idea that the body responds more faithfully to regular care than to dramatic effort. Consistency is the language the human body understands best. Every biological system, from muscles and bones to hormones and neural circuits, adapts based on repeated signals over time rather than isolated bursts of intensity. When movement is practiced daily within comfortable limits, the body interprets it as a stable environmental condition and adjusts its structure and function to support that reality. This is why gentle, habitual activity preserves mobility and strength more reliably than occasional extreme exercise. The body is not designed to recover endlessly from shock, especially as repair mechanisms slow with age. Respecting limits does not mean avoiding challenge, but choosing a level of challenge that can be sustained without injury or exhaustion. Chinese elders demonstrate this wisdom by moving in ways that invite participation rather than resistance. Scientifically, this approach minimizes chronic inflammation, a key driver of aging and degenerative disease. Intense physical stress can create prolonged inflammatory responses, especially when recovery is incomplete. Over time, this inflammation damages tissues, impairs insulin sensitivity, and disrupts immune balance. Consistent moderate movement keeps inflammation within a healthy range, allowing repair processes to dominate rather than destruction. There's also a neurological aspect to respecting limits. When the brain senses that movement is safe and manageable, it refines motor patterns and reduces unnecessary muscle tension. This efficiency lowers energy expenditure and protects joints from uneven loading. Movements performed without fear or strain are smoother, more coordinated, and less likely to cause injury. Over decades, this efficiency accumulates into resilience. Habitual movement also preserves identity. Elders who move daily maintain a sense of autonomy and trust in their bodies. This psychological continuity has biological consequences, as confidence in movement reduces the risk of sedentary behavior, which is itself a powerful predictor of mortality. The willingness to keep moving, even gently, keeps circulation active, metabolism responsive, and the nervous system engaged. There is a quiet humility in this way of living. Instead of forcing the body to meet abstract fitness ideals, elders listen to daily feedback and adjust accordingly. Science recognizes this as adaptive self-regulation, a process that supports long-term survival by preventing catastrophic failure. Over time, strength becomes less about how much the body can lift or endure in a single moment and more about how reliably it can support daily life. This form of strength allows individuals to rise from the floor, walk steadily, and interact with the world without dependence. It is a strength built not on ambition, but on patience. When movement becomes a daily companion rather than a periodic challenge, the body remains familiar with itself. Aging then becomes a process of gradual adaptation rather than abrupt decline, and longevity emerges not as an achievement, but as a natural consequence of honoring the body's rhythms, capacities, and need for steady, compassionate care.